She was 19 and sleeping inside the back seat of a rusted hatchback behind an abandoned gas station. Most nights she wrapped herself in an old wool blanket that smelled faintly of smoke and rainwater. The windows barely closed, cold air slipped through the cracked rubber seals and touched her skin while freight trucks groaned down the highway nearby. Her name was Eliza Vane. 3 months earlier, she still had a bedroom, a family, a future that made sense. Now she had $43 in cash, a backpack full of clothes, and a folded letter from her grandfather that she kept hidden inside her jacket. The town of Black Hollow barely noticed her anymore. People looked away when she walked past, especially after what happened with her father, especially after the funeral. And when an old county auction listed a burned-out abandoned glass factory for $1, Eliza bought it. Everyone laughed. The place had been empty for nearly 20 years. Broken windows, collapsed roofs, old furnace tunnels beneath the foundation. Locals said the factory was cursed after the fire. Nobody wanted it. Nobody except her. But what she didn't know was something inside that factory had been waiting for someone to come back. And behind a rusted control panel hidden deep beneath the furnace room, something had survived the fire. Something no one had touched in decades. The first night she stepped inside the factory, she heard a sound that made her freeze completely. A slow metallic click, coming from somewhere underground. Before we continue, if stories like this make you feel something, if you enjoy slow mysteries, forgotten places, and emotional discoveries, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. And while you watch, think about this. Have you ever found something small that changed your entire life? Because for Eliza, it started with a $1 building nobody wanted. Eliza grew up in a narrow brick house beside the river on the east side of Black Hollow. The house always smelled like dust, soup broth, and machine oil. Her grandfather, Walter Vane, had worked at the Ashmore Glass Factory for 42 years. Almost everyone in town knew him. He repaired furnace controls, pressure gauges, temperature systems, tiny things nobody noticed until they stopped working. Walter had rough hands, burned scars across his fingers, and a habit of tapping metal twice before touching it. Even after retirement, he still woke before sunrise every morning, still drank black coffee from the same chipped cup, still sharpened tools slowly beside the kitchen window, while old jazz music played softly on the radio. When Eliza was little, she sat beside him in the garage for hours. He taught her how to listen carefully, not just hear. Listen to machines he used to tell her everything speaks before it breaks. At 7 years old, she learned how to tell when pipes carried trapped air. At 10, she could identify loose bearings just by sound. At 13, she knew how to rebuild old electrical switches better than most adults in town. Her father hated it. He wanted her focused on school, on real opportunities. Not greasy old machinery. Not dead factories. Not the past. But Walter believed different things. The world throws away too much, he once told her while fixing a cracked furnace valve, places, objects, people, most things still got life in them. Eliza never forgot that, especially later, especially after everything collapsed. When the glass factory fire happened, Eliza was only 6 years old. She still remembered the smoke, dark clouds swallowing the night sky, sirens echoing across town. People standing silently near the river, while orange flames rose above the factory roof. The fire lasted nearly 14 hours. Afterward, the factory never reopened. Hundreds lost their jobs. Black Hollow slowly died after that. Stores closed. Families moved away. Houses emptied. And Walter stopped talking as much. Sometimes Eliza caught him staring toward the factory from the front porch at sunset. Not angry. Not sad exactly, just unfinished. Years later, when Walter became sick, he spent more time in the garage with Eliza, teaching her things he never taught anyone else. How furnace pressure worked, how old industrial control systems operated, how hidden maintenance tunnels were built beneath factories during the 1940s. The old builders hid everything, he once said quietly. Why? Because factories were like little cities underground. Then he smiled faintly. People only notice what's above them. 3 weeks before he died, Walter handed Eliza a folded piece of paper. It wasn't money. It wasn't a will. Just a rough hand-drawn sketch. Part of the Ashmore Glass Factory basement. and beside one section near the furnace room, he had written 4 words. Something survived fire. Eliza asked him what it meant, but Walter only looked toward the window and said softly, "Someday you'll understand." After Walter died, everything changed fast. Medical debt swallowed the family. Eliza's father became colder every week. Harder, meaner. He sold most of Walter's tools within 2 months. Said they were junk. Said the past was worthless. The night Eliza argued with him, rain hammered the roof so loudly the walls shook. "You're becoming him," her father snapped. "Good." The word escaped before she could stop it. Silence filled the kitchen instantly. Her father stared at her for a long moment. Then he said something she would never forget. "If you care more about dead factories in this family, then leave." And she did. At 19 years old, with 1 backpack, 1 blanket, and Walter's folded map hidden inside her coat pocket. For weeks she drifted between parking lot shelters and abandoned places, until one afternoon at the county office, she saw the auction listing. Ashmore Glass Factory, condemned property. Minimum bid $1. Eliza stared at the paper for nearly 10 minutes. The clerk laughed when she asked about it. "You serious?" "Yes. That place is falling apart." She pulled a single dollar bill from her pocket anyway, and somehow the factory became hers. The drive to the factory happened during late October. Gray skies, cold wind, dead leaves scraping across empty roads. The closer Eliza got to Black Hollow's industrial district, the quieter everything became. No traffic, no voices, only the sound of loose metal signs creaking in the wind. Then she saw it. Ashmore Glass Factory. The building rose from the fog like the skeleton of something ancient. Tall smokestacks, broken windows, blackened brick walls stained by smoke from 20 years earlier. Part of the roof had collapsed inward. The parking lot was swallowed by weeds taller than her knees. Eliza stepped out slowly. The air smelled strange. Wet concrete, rust, and something faintly burned beneath it all. She stood there for almost a minute without moving. This place had shaped her grandfather's entire life. Now it belonged to her. The front doors barely opened. Metal screamed loudly as she forced them apart. Inside, silence. Massive silence. Dust floated through pale light beams from shattered windows overhead. Old conveyor systems hung motionless above the factory floor. Glass fragments still glittered across the concrete. Somewhere deep inside the building, water dripped slowly. Eliza's footsteps echoed endlessly. Then she noticed something strange. Near the furnace wing, the dust looked disturbed. Not fresh exactly, but not untouched either. As if something had moved through there long after the fire. The first week inside the factory was miserable. No electricity, no heat, no running water. Eliza slept inside an old office using cardboard for insulation against broken windows. At night, wind howled through ventilation shafts like distant voices. Twice she almost left, but every time she unfolded Walter's map, she stayed. During the day, she explored carefully. Most staircases were unstable. Sections of ceiling sagged dangerously overhead. The deeper furnace rooms were worst of all. Heat damage still scarred the walls black. Old control panels lined entire corridors underground. Thousands of switches, dead gauges, burned wires hanging like vines. And everywhere, that smell, ash, metal, something old. On the 4th day, Eliza heard the clicking sound again. Slow, sharp, metal against metal. She froze beside the furnace tunnel entrance. Click, then silence. Her flashlight trembled slightly in her hand. Hello. Nothing answered, only distant dripping water. But when she stepped closer to the sound, she noticed one of the furnace control panels looked cleaner than the others. Not clean, just less buried beneath dust. As if someone once touched it regularly. That night Eliza couldn't sleep. Rain tapped softly against broken windows, while she stared at Walter's sketch beneath flashlight glow. The map showed maintenance tunnels under furnace room 3. But when she searched there earlier, the walls ended in solid concrete. Something didn't match. The next morning she returned underground. The lower corridors felt colder than before. She followed old cable lines along the walls, past rusted tanks, past broken safety signs, past rows of dead machinery. Then she saw it. Tiny scrape marks on the floor beneath the cleaner control panel. Like something heavy had shifted once. Her pulse quickened. She knelt carefully beside the panel. The bolts looked older than the others, but not untouched. One corner carried faint fingerprints buried beneath years of dust. Eliza pressed against the metal. Nothing moved. Then she remembered something Walter used to say. Old systems always hide secondary locks. She searched slowly along the edges. Finally, her fingers touched a small recessed switch beneath the panel frame. Click. A sound echoed deep behind the wall. Eliza stepped back immediately. For several seconds. Nothing happened. Then somewhere inside the concrete, metal groaned. The hidden panel opened less than 3 inches before jamming completely. Eliza pulled harder. Dust exploded outward. Old air rushed from the darkness behind it. Cold, dry, forgotten. Her flashlight revealed narrow stairs descending underground, far deeper than the visible factory basement. She hesitated. Every survival instinct told her not to go down there alone, but curiosity pulled harder. The stairs creaked beneath her weight. The deeper she descended, the quieter the world became. No wind, no dripping water, only her breathing. Then the tunnel opened into a hidden maintenance chamber. Eliza stopped completely. The room looked untouched by the fire. Shelves lined the walls. Old tools, storage crates, blueprint tubes, everything covered beneath thick gray dust. In one corner stood a large steel cabinet connected to another control system, and beside it, a chair. Someone had spent time down here. A lot of time. The flashlight beam moved slowly across the walls. Notes still pinned corkboards, old maintenance logs, dates from decades earlier. Then she saw a name written across one clipboard. Walter Vane, her grandfather. Eliza's throat tightened instantly. Why had he hidden this place? And why never tell anyone? Then she noticed something else. The steel cabinet had no handle, only a circular locking mechanism beside a faded number dial. And above it, 3 words painted faintly on the metal surface. Emergency archive storage. Eliza spent nearly 2 days trying to open the cabinet. The mechanism was ancient, half rusted. The number dial barely turned. She almost gave up, until she remembered the rhythm Walter used when fixing machines. Tap twice, pause, then adjust slowly. The moment she copied the pattern, the lock clicked open. Her hands shook as the cabinet door creaked outward. Inside were rows of sealed metal containers, documents, ledgers, photographs, and beneath them, cash boxes, real cash boxes. Eliza stared in disbelief. Inside the first box had bundles of old bills wrapped carefully in oilcloth. The second contained gold coins. The third held stacks of bonds and payroll certificates never claimed after the factory fire. But it wasn't the money that made her cry. It was the final container. A small wooden box with her name written across the top. Eliza. Inside rested Walter's old pocket watch. A photograph of them together in the garage. And a letter. Her hands trembled while unfolding it. The paper smelled faintly of machine oil. Just like him. The letter read, "If you found this, it means you listened longer than everyone else." Eliza wiped tears from her face. You always notice things others ignore that matters more than people understand. The letter explained everything. After the factory fire company executives secretly abandoned unpaid worker compensation funds to avoid bankruptcy investigations, Walter discovered hidden assets stored underground before the shutdown. But instead of stealing it, he protected it, waited, because he knew one day the money could help someone worth trusting. The final line shattered her completely. This place was never broken, Eliza, just forgotten like people sometimes are, for several minutes. She sat alone in the underground chamber, crying quietly beside the steel cabinet, while dust floated through flashlight beams around her. Not because she was rich, but because for the first time since Walter died, she felt found again. The months afterward were slow, very slow. Eliza didn't suddenly become wealthy overnight. Most of the funds required legal processing, historical verification, court approvals, but eventually, a portion became legally hers. Enough to survive, enough to rebuild. She repaired one section of the factory first, just a small workshop beside the old furnace wing. She cleaned windows, fixed wiring, restored old machinery piece by piece using Walter's notes. Some days, she failed constantly. Pipes burst, electrical systems shorted, half the roof leaked during winter storms. But she kept going. An elderly electrician named Raymond began helping occasionally after hearing about the restoration. "You got your grandfather's hands," he told her one afternoon. Eliza smiled quietly. The factory slowly changed, not into some giant business empire. Something smaller, more meaningful, a community workshop. Glass artists rented small spaces there. Metal workers returned. Local teenagers learned repair skills after school. Life came back slowly. And every evening before locking up, Eliza walked downstairs into the hidden chamber. Not for the money, for the feeling, the reminder. Some things survive fire. People think value is obvious. They think important things shine immediately. But sometimes the most valuable things look ruined from the outside. An abandoned building, an old tool, a forgotten town. A lonely 19-year-old girl sleeping in her car. Healing rarely arrives all at once. Sometimes it comes quietly, one hidden room at a time, one memory at a time, one person believing in you when nobody else does. Walter understood that, and eventually, Eliza did too. Nearly 3 years later, snow fell softly outside the restored workshop windows. Warm light glowed across the factory floor again. Not like before. Better somehow. Calmer. Eliza stood beside the furnace corridor holding Walter's pocket watch, while distant laughter echoed through the building behind her. The same place everyone abandoned had become home again. She thought back to that first night. Cold, alone, terrified beside the rusted entrance doors. Back then she believed she had lost everything. But standing there now, she finally understood something her grandfather tried to teach her all along. Broken things are not always empty and forgotten places. Sometimes protect the most important parts of us. If this story touched you in any way, subscribe to the channel for more emotional mystery stories like this one. And in the comments, tell us about something in your life that once felt broken, but still carried value inside. Sometimes those stories deserve to be remembered too.